welcome Dr. Anna Toker to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us here.
My pleasure, Rob, as always.
So I started out with, you know, talking about this particular one, which is the
The
Liberty,
Liberty.
which I
Mhm.
believe, correct me, is that's kind of where everything started from, as far as hey, let's see, how can
Yes,
we
I'll give you
yeah
a
give
quick
me the
background
background on
on the
where we
technology.
kicked
Yeah,
off
so
here.
the creator of this company and this technology is an engineer in complex computer systems. And his mother has MS, and so he's always had sort of this side interest in neurology and neurophysiology. And he kept thinking, for mom, I'm going to figure out when they come up with a cure for MS, I'll be among the first people to know about it. And then I'll bring mom to that doctor. That was always sort of his thought. And so he reads all these, like, just like you and I might watch sports or have some other interest, he reads neurology journals from around the world, especially in the Eastern medicine, because they do a lot of reflexology
Right.
and acupuncture and all this kind of Eastern medicine. So he reads the Western and the Eastern literature, which is unique because most researchers stick to their silo. They don't really
Right.
know what other paths of thought are. And so as he's reading along, he starts realizing, I don't know, when you do acupuncture or acupressure or reflexology, you're applying a pressure or a skin sensation to one part of the body, and it seems to be affecting a completely unrelated different part of the body. And so he started following a lot of this type of science in the Eastern medicine. And there was a paper that came out that sort of defined how the autonomic nervous system is what is being tapped into when you do something like reflexology or acupuncture, acupressure. You're tapping into the autonomic nervous system through the skin. It's going from the skin to the brain's transmitting it, a brain signal changes.
Right.
So he decides, because of reflexology, to see if he couldn't figure out how that worked. And so he purchased a database of EEGs out of Europe. It's the largest data bank of EEGs. He wrote a computer program to interpret the data of all the little squiggles,
Yep.
and then basically made an easy to see interpretation guide where there's normal. He took all the normal ones, put those in a range, and made those like a green color. So when the squiggles are in that range, it's green. When the squiggles are going too fast, it might show as red or yellow or something like that. So it makes a color coded map based on how quick the electronic signals in an EEG are working. Okay, so he takes that from normal and then starts applying all these diseased EEGs and realizes that there is a distinct normalcy to every organ system in your body, and you can see when it's too fast and when it's too slow. And he started using other people's published research on how to tap into the autonomic nervous system
Hmm.
to create a texture that he originally sewed into socks, and to see if he could turn off signals back to green for ease of understanding.
Right.
And so he had socks, and the point of those socks were to improve balance, and this was for mom. Like, the first pair went to mom.
Right.
Like, he's like, this is not going to cure your MS, but at least you'll have more balance, and they
Right.
worked well. He started making these socks in high quantities in Canada. He's Canadian, so there was a Canadian company that made them originally, and they sold them to a lot of athletes, really
Right.
hockey players,
Right.
since the majority of injuries in hockey are off balance injuries. So they made these socks as athletic socks, believe it or not. So they had older people wearing them, and then they had the young kids playing hockey wearing them. And then, as he says, one night he's in bed reading, journals, while his wife is trying to sleep, And he reads in a journal, and in an article that wound up winning a Nobel Prize, believe it or not, that talks about anywhere in the skin, they have these what are called ion channels.
Hmm.
And ion channels are the way cells communicate with each other. So just think of them as like little on off buttons, you know, for a light switch, for lack
Right.
of better
Right.
words. Each cell has these little channels. And if you send off ion channels at a very particular pattern, it will send a signal to the brain that that's either something bad or that's something good or that's something indifferent. The brain will make a reflex change based on it, and it doesn't matter where in the body that signal is. If it's on a part of sensate skin, it doesn't have to be the feet.
Right.
This will happen. So that's when he had his aha moment. Wait, it doesn't have to be socks. It could be like just a patch. You just wear it when you want to, right?
Patch. Right.
Yeah, exactly. A little
Right there.
Band-Aid patch,
Can I see
right?
it? Yeah.
So, and I keep one on my hip, and I'm not going to show you. On my hip. But then he also started experimenting in how many other parts of the brain can you tap into. So when you tap into the most rudimentary aspect of the brain, right up the brain stem, the medulla of the brain that's
Right.
right next to the cerebellum. So you're going to capture both the person's ability to balance themselves, but you're also going to capture the very most central aspect of the cranial nerves, including the vagus nerve and the autonomic nervous system. So that first patch was essentially a peel and stick sock, for lack of better words. And it is designed as almost like the Control Alt Delete for crazy brainwaves. It just gets everything back to normal. Now, the second you take the patch off, you go back to Looney Tunes if that's what it is. But so if your balance is off when you put the patch on, you can see an EEG change within 10 seconds, 5 to 10 seconds. And the patient can demonstrate an improvement in their balance and spatial perceptions while wearing this patch. You take the patch off, wait 10 or 15 seconds, the effect is gone. So it's not a placebo effect. You can demonstrate it with the EEG, and you can demonstrate it with a physical exam, essentially. So now he's taken that concept and expanded it to other aspects of the autonomic nervous system. So
Right.
there's one for anxiety, there's one for focus, there's one for skin circulation to give you kind of a glowy skin. There's one for men for testosterone, erectile dysfunction kind of a thing. Women are too complicated. He said more than one patch would be required. But for men, it's just one pathway. So if there's one pathway, you can buy a patch, stick it on your skin, and improve it. Now, if you're someone who, let's say, for example, he has one for sleep. You wear it at night to sleep. It's not going to make you sleepy. You could wear that patch and walk around. It's not like you're drunk. You're not going to feel off kilter. If you're someone who doesn't struggle with sleep, you're not going to recognize that this patch has helped you anymore. If you're someone who's down in caffeine right before you go to bed, this patch is not going to override a chemical.
Right.
But if you're someone who just kind of struggles to fall asleep, nightly use of this patch over the course of their study was a 2 week period of time. If you wear it every night for 2 weeks, you'll find you go to bed 30% quicker and you sleep 30% more soundly. And so it's like a chronic use, and it reorganizes the pathways in your brain that are responsible for sleep. So that's just the sleep example, but it happens in all these other pathways. He has a pain patch. I don't know if you saw that paper, but
I did.
so it's all the same. Yeah. So 80% of people's chronic pain comes from the central aspect of your brain and the amygdala and this constant rumination over ouch that hurts, and this patch just tells your brain
Kind of.
to stop to chill, stop that constant rumination over your pain. And so 80% of chronic pain can be removed with one of these patches. So it's fascinating technology. There's no drugs in it. There's no batteries required. It doesn't look like it's doing anything. You're wearing one. It's like a band-aid,
It is.
right?
Yeah.
And so the motion of your skin is what trips off the ion channels. Now I will say this: those ion channels are also required for immunity. So the way your body talks to itself, that oh, there's a viral invasion or you're allergic to something, is with these ion channels. So he does have a patch that will improve your brain's control over the immune system. It's called the Defend patch. And so that's the kind of thing I travel with
This one right
personally,
here.
because it'll keep you, yeah, it'll kind of, like it's not antibiotics.
Right.
You're not going to cure TB with that, but it will optimize your immune system. So when you're traveling, you're less likely to get like some form of airborne illness when you're traveling. The reason I bring that up is not just because that's a cool fact, and he has a patch, but if you've got a patch that's stuck really well to your skin and you just rip it off like a band aid, it will cause a cellular immune response that lasts for days. And I don't know if you've ever gotten one of those hickeys from one of these patches. It's one of the complaints that people will have about the patch. They'll take a patch, especially the sleep patch,
Hmm.
because it's stuck on for 10 hours and you wake up and you peel it off. If you peel it off too quick, you'll trigger a whole bunch of ion channels you didn't mean to, and it will call the immune system into the area and can cause a little bit of a rash. That's not an allergic reaction. That is a bazillion ion channels all going off at the same time because you ripped it off your skin. So the company typically suggests use soap, water, get in the shower and let water get under it, and then it just peels right off, and you will never have that rash. So
Okay.
just as a FYI.
That's important.
That's an important FYI
Yeah.
because some people will get that rash and think, "Oh my God, I'm allergic to it," and they'll
R-
stop
right.
using it.
Right. And it might
But
be.
there's no contraindication to that. You can be pregnant, you can be old, you can be a child. Any medicine, it doesn't really matter. This technology, if you can feel in that part of your skin, it can work. For the NFL, he has an athletic patch called the Victory Patch. He puts actually in the mouthpiece for football players and in the helmets that touch their. You just need the smallest little piece of skin that has sensation, and it will send the signal to your brain. Doesn't have to be a glue on patch. And so he's always coming up with new and different ways to get that technology onto your skin. It's kind of fascinating.
Where do you think it's going to be going to? Like, you know,
This is my thoughts. So, and I do sit on the medical board. This is why you asked me to talk about the technology. But I sit on his medical board, and one of the things that we do is call each other up and ask each other nerdy questions. And in my opinion, both Eastern and Western medicine, to be honest with you, is very reflexive. A person comes to you with a disease, and then you offer a medicine, a poultice, an herb, a tea, whatever. And so it's funny because the Eastern guys complain about the Western guys writing prescriptions, and the prescription guys complain about the Eastern guys, ringing bells and shining lights in people's eyes. But that philosophy of waiting for people to get sick is consistent in medicine, which is why there probably are no healthy people. So the whole point would be, as a doctor, wouldn't it be nice if disease did not exist? And so it is possible for disease to not exist if you could do a couple of things. One would be to control the toxins in your environment. Now, that is very difficult to do. The second would be if you could control the human microbiome, which seems to be responsible for all human disease. And then if you could take the brain, which we use 5 to 10% of maybe, and keep it in a position of neutrality so it doesn't get off center. Jay, the owner of the company, sent me a paper the other day, which is kind of deep in the weeds, but it was interesting because, and obviously the person who wrote that probably does not know about his technology. What is interesting is a lot of these PhDs around the world, he would physically call, email, write, go visit in person, and without exception got kicked out of every single office because he's an engineer. He's not a neuroscience. He's not a doctor. He doesn't have a PhD. He's an engineer. They blew them off completely. They may not even know this technology exists. But so they were positing in this thing that interestingly, the autonomic nervous system can control all organ systems. Well, of course, Jay has already figured that out. This paper also said, interestingly, the EEG in disease states is different, and you can diagnose disease with an EEG. And of course, Jay already knows that. So I think the first thing that potentially will happen is that physicians or even kiosks at Walgreens could put a little helmet on you, figure out which neurologic system was out of whack before a symptom even showed up. Because as it turns out, these EEG waves occur to compensate for a disease process before you, the patient, can really recognize the symptom is there. So I think the first thing is you might have in airports and Walgreens, just like they got blood pressure cuffs
Right.
and little blood sugar sticks. You might even have a watch that does this, or a little baseball hat, whatever, because the mobile unit that he uses to demonstrate the effects is not that big. I don't know how much it cost, but it seems like step one would be diagnosis at an early state before damaged tissue occurs.
Right.
That would be ideal, right? The second thing is, could you possibly, after finding that area and getting it back to normal, could you potentially permanently control a person's microbiome? When the microbiome has been that's the bacteria in your intestinal tract, which, as it turns out, is probably in control of the origin of most diseases. So if your microbiome is not functioning properly, you've exposed yourself to a certain amount of diseases, and they can demonstrate that. They can give diseases to people through fecal transplants, which is why now that's so tightly regulated. You can prevent diseases with fecal transplantation. That's the microbiome. So we're working currently on a study to figure out exactly what texture would one need for the brain to talk to the microbiome, and to know that he's going to do a study where we run parallel EEGs with people with microbiome, and you can physically test the microbiome.
Right.
So once you've mapped everyone's microbiome and then you correlate that to an EEG, he ought to be able to figure out with he's the only guy who knows how to do this. Everyone else is guessing. He's figured it out. He knows it, and he won't tell anyone how he does it. It requires two supercomputers, but he's been able to figure that out, and he may be able to know, look, based on this but you could send in a stool study, and he might know instantly, I can guarantee this person has this problem based on that stool study. Here's the patch for you to fix it. So it goes kind of into the brain gut
Right.
parallel
Connection.
connection. So I think it has the opportunity, which is one of the reasons why he will never sell his product. Like, this represents an enormous threat to the pharmaceutical industry, because there may not be any medicines required going forward, right? So if you could do that, this is an over the counter that's not going to injure you. Like, if you took grandma's blood pressure pills and took all 30 of them, that might kill you. But you could slap 500 super patches on your body. It's not going to change anything.
Right.
One patch is all it takes to get you into normal. So it's a safer platform. The mentality is find disease early before there is disease. Once there's diseased tissue, yeah, what can a patch accomplish, right?
Right.
It's not gonna replace your surgery. It's not gonna prevent your cancer. What you're trying to do is figure out where in the disease process can you intervene so that you're less likely to need an operation, get a cancer, get a metabolic disease, an autoimmune disease, etc. Right? So I think the future of the technology is going to be that, and then that puts everyone's health in their own hands. And in an era where most countries spend half of their tax dollar income on healthcare dollars, yet people are sicker than they've ever been.
Right.
Doctors my age are retiring, en masse because we just don't get paid to do what we do for a living. And they're really not training the young doctors. I mean, I just saw they want to shorten medical school to 3 years, then do like a 1 year residency program. You're not a doctor at that point. You've gotten, like, that's crazy to me. But that's what they're doing with your healthcare system. So I highly suggest not waiting until you get sick to intervene.
This
You'll
is,
wind up,
yeah,
they'll get to a point where they just send you home to die. And that's what they do in some socialized countries, to be honest with you. So I'm excited about the technology in that regard because I think there's a lot of future, as simple as this stuff is, it's so highly complex.
right.
Your brain does all the work. It's fascinating. It's like alien tech. I'm convinced he was abducted by aliens. He says he was not. I'm convinced he was.
That's great. So, what patches do you currently align yourself to? Because I think that's the biggest thing. And you made a statement is that if everything is correctly aligned, you really aren't going to see any benefit from it.
Right, correct, exactly.
You know.
Right, so I'm a pretty happy-go-lucky person. So he's got a patch for depression called Joy
Yep.
that helps people with depression. I could wear that. That is not going to change anything in my life. Now, I'm under uncommon amounts of stress. And like in a lark and in an experiment, someone asked me to wear a continuous glucose monitor. So I bought like a year-long membership to have one.
Okay.
And every time the office calls, I get a blood sugar spike. At night when I'm sleeping, if a text goes, blood sugar. If I have a big surgery the next morning, my blood sugar will spike. On stress is my problem. So I use a peace patch. That's the one I am wearing right now. I'm wearing two right now. One is a Liberty patch because that's your brain's central microbiome. If I truly believed that gut health is the source of all health, and I do, and in fact, Hippocrates believed that. Basically said no manner of brains is worth a good set of bowels. Like he knew 4,000 years ago that the number one way to have a healthy person is to have a normal and healthy digestive tract. Now, if he knew that 4,000 years ago, why have we kind of forgotten that? But so I wear a Liberty patch
Okay.
because it's good for vagal nerve stuff. I also have an autoimmune disease which affects my joints and a little bit of my balance. So I want that for my balance. And then I wear a stress peace patch and on my blood sugar monitor, if I've got those two things on, I do not have the crazy blood sugar spikes unless I eat something that's high in sugar
So you
or
find that
wheat.
that is has calmed your spike.
A lot, yes. That calms a lot of things down. It helps me maintain my muscle mass. I'm trying to get into shape. I'm trying to get rid of some of this, arthritis situation. And for 2 years, I wasn't able to do any exercise. But between the freedom patch, which is for pain, so I wear that when I'm exercising, so I can get like work that joint. My liberty and my peace. I mean, honestly, in the last 3 or 4 months, it's made an enormous impact. It doesn't happen overnight, obviously, because the human body doesn't turn on a dime. Your EEG will turn on a dime. The stress patch EEG looks the same when you wear it as if you took someone who's just been meditating professionally for like 6 hours. So if you took a monk, a Buddhist monk who's been meditating all day long, he can actually calm his EEG down, and you can do it in 5 minutes with a piece of plastic. So for me, I like the peace patch because it definitely makes me feel more zen. I do not. I'm too ADD to meditate. So for me, I find that to be
You'd have to go
the
back
best
for
one.
more school to learn how to
I
meditate.
can't do it. No, I can't do it.
I know.
So peace patch for me, baby. To me, that's the money. And I have told Jay, peace patch is the money, and it's doing much more than just alleviating the stress. Because when you combine a liberty patch and a peace patch, those two things both The adrenal axis and the brain both directly control gut health and the microbiome. So, in my opinion, somewhere in these two patches, and maybe he may or may not have the technology to find the third puzzle piece, but his microbiome study, I told him those are the two patches that he needs to apply to see if that doesn't affect the microbiome, because in my opinion, it's going to.
So, do you think that the victory patch has some of that balance, some of
Yes.
that performance? How do those intertwine, right? Because people are
Yes,
gonna.
they're very similar. So the Liberty patch and the Victory patch are very, very similar. The Liberty patch seems to hit a lot more of like the parasympathetic autonomic nervous system,
Okay.
whereas the Victory patch has a tendency to hit more cerebellar. So the original socks actually hit both of these pathways. So from a, I'm sure, and he would never say this, but I am sure from a marketing standpoint, why hit two when you get two different products out of it? I'm sure that's what he's thinking. But basically, the original socks were both.
Okay.
And but the peel, but you can't get those anymore. So the
Right.
socks don't exist
Right.
anymore. So it's these two. If you're out playing football or rugby or hockey, you're not really interested in gut health at this moment, right? So
Right.
you can put that one aside,
Right.
get the full spectrum of the athleticism. Like that is, I mean, the NFL players, Olympians, professional golfers, I mean, name a professional sport, they are all wearing these patches. Collegiate D1 athletes who want to be professional athletes are all wearing these patches. It improves their rate of speed, their rate of recovery, their reflex, their timing, and it just your athletic ability can be ramped. I mean, by 20 to 30%. And so there's a study coming out of University of Arizona where they use the football team as guinea pigs to physically demonstrate how this works on a football field. A lot of their other sports are just with regular people kind of doing exercises.
Sure.
So they took an entire football team, University of Arizona. These are top D1 athletes, and put them through the rigors to see exactly, like, you've got a prime athlete. Now slap this patch on. Now what does it do? Right. And
Yeah.
so that paper hopefully will be coming out, and I don't know the results of that, but that paper will be coming out hopefully sometime real soon. So it is interesting that some older people who have mobility issues, usually you would think, look, Liberty Patch, it's going to get you a little bit of your brain, a little bit of your balance. And so I always start old people Liberty Patch. My mom, I got her on a Liberty Patch. But some of these people who truly are struggling with athleticism might actually need a Victory Patch
Sure.
because they're trying. I mean, to them, getting out of a chair might be this Olympic event.
Hmm.
So you kind of have to, from a clinical standpoint, you kind of have to play it by ear. The danger of lay people using the patches is they try to associate, oh, if I have this disease, can I use this patch? It's not really disease specific, it's more of a symptom specific issue. And a lot of symptoms are as the result of multiple physiological processes that could be wrong. So the company has to be very cautious with what claims it allows people to make. I mean, it's not going to, it doesn't replace your doctor.
Right.
It may not replace any medicines, but he's got one that actually will lower your A1C, and he can't bring it to market because that claim is not allowed by the FDA. So all of his patches are FDA registered. They're not medicines, so they can't approve a non-medication. But it's a medical device like K tape or an ACE wrap or
Sure.
braces and whatnot. These are FDA cleared devices, and so all these devices are FDA cleared. The one that truly he's done the study, and it lowers your A1C. So in other words, it helps maintain blood sugar control. He can't bring it to market for that indication because that indication is so tightly controlled by the FDA.
So I'm gonna throw in
So,
something else in it in the mix, right?
well, that's exactly right. And I think at one point, I'm sure he's got collateral studies right now studying people. Throw the shit on. Tell me what else. What else does it help?
That's right.
You
That's
know,
right.
and then you can set. You know, it's interesting because I'm developing a blood sugar stabilization product that's an herbal supplement, and we will be able to say something to that effect on this herbal supplement. And so I find it fascinating. He's not able to say that on his product, and I don't know why. It has something to do with FDA regulations. And of course, he's in the crosshairs of pharmaceutical companies that have already offered him $1 billion for his technology he refuses to sell. So he does not want this in the hand of pharmaceutical industry because they'll box it and no one will ever see it.
That's right. Put
He's
it on
like, this is a
put on the
cheap
shelf.
answer for everyone around the world. You know, there's small countries with no money, people living in tiny little villages who do not have a pharmacy and no access to medicine. This doesn't spoil, it's easy to use, it doesn't cost much money. You know, it's like, so this is a way to disseminate health to the masses. And a pharmaceutical industry is not keen on that. So anyway, he has to be very, very cautious
His claims.
with the claims.
Right.
Yeah, so you just cannot make a claim, which is why I'm very careful to say, you know, it's not putting you to sleep. You're putting yourself to sleep.
Right.
It's like a crutch, you know, when you twist an ankle. The crutch didn't heal your ankle. It just supported your weight while your body was healing the ankle. This is the same concept, except it's a neurologic crutch, for lack of better words. I don't know how else to say it.
And you're not. It's not ever going to really fix that condition, and probably a lot of it has to do with the fact that as we get older, just like an older computer, you start having more errors. You start replicating
Correct. So what,
incorrectly.
and this was in the paper he sent me, there was an interesting statement that may reverse my concept on fix something, because the brain has something like, there's homeostasis, which we talk about, where everything is in balance.
Right.
The brain will achieve something called allostasis, which means if the sensory comes up enough times and the brain can't fix it, the brain gives up and says, screw it, I'm going to the new level. Your blood sugar kind of does that too, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
you have normal blood sugar until you wear the system down. Next thing you know, boom, your new set is now 130 instead of 100, you know? And so that's called allostasis. You can put the brain into allostasis with disease, and you can pull it out of allostasis with correction. And the question is, how long
Right.
does that take? Probably years and years and years and years, because the brain waves are off long before the disease shows up.
Sure.
So my suspicion is, if you wore this patch for 10 years, there is a possibility, in theory, based on that one paper, I don't know, maybe that would happen, but you'd have to wear it 24/7 for a decade, probably, for the plasticity of your brain to get to where it doesn't need the tickle anymore.
Right.
If I had to make a guess. And if you disease the body enough, there's no going back. I mean, you know, the second you have to replace the knee, like, that's never the same.
Sure.
Even though you're walking on it, the neurologic intervention of that is never going to be the same. So obviously, I don't think you'll ever get a permanent fix, but never say never. Based on that paper, the brain is capable of permanent fix. But they just don't know what it would take
Right.
for that to happen.
Repetition, duration, and what level of consistency you
Correct.
need to.
Yeah, it is also interesting that they can do an EEG and determine if you're going to age gracefully or not. Right? So they can.
Have
There
you
was
had
like,
that?
I have not, and they didn't really describe. This is literally like two paragraphs where the guy starts talking very factually. So I don't know if that's it. There's 500 references. I haven't had the chance to go through all the references, but literally discusses that there is And it's fascinating. There's a part of your brain that's the me that knows that you're alive, right?
Yeah.
So there's the me factor. The me factor is diseased in autistic people. This is why they can't interact with other people because they don't have a starting point of me. And of course, I told Jay that is fascinating because if they can see the me factory on an EEG,
Right.
trust me, he'll figure out the patch to put on autistic kids to give them their lives back. Can you imagine what that would do?
Amazing.
You know, it'd be without drugs. Can you imagine? So anyway, so there's a part in your brain that even at a young age will go off the rails a little bit and outlines this is someone who's not going to age well. So obviously, there's something already going wrong. Your brain is already trying to correct the pathway. And with many years of no one knowing it's even going on, boom, all of a sudden you get this other problem. So the fact that that was written in a journal article means either someone theorized it, now go find it, or they found it and don't know what to do with it.
Right.
But yeah, Jay's like a dog on a bone. If it's theoretic, he will find somebody. He'll probably find the author of that paper and communicate with them. Where did you get that data from?
Right.
And that person may or may not talk to him about it. But can you imagine? That would
They'll,
be
they'll,
great.
they'll,
Like if you
they'll
could pick
talk.
up at
They'll talk
30.
to you though.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah.
I mean,
Maybe.
listen,
Good.
if you got to put Jay right behind you,
Right.
you know.
Jay just be like the recent presidential debate where you had one guy staring off into space and messing with her and getting voices from beyond. I could just put Jay right there in my ear
That's it.
and then know what to say, know how to answer my questions.
Exactly. Right.
And I'll ask the questions of
you know,
easy.
we'll figure it out one way or another.
Yes, exactly. But the theory is there. So I think alien medicine, Star Trekky style, is actually close to being not a theory anymore, where you could have a scan and know there's a problem, right? And of course, in Star Trek world, it was the whole body
Sure.
looking for a diseased body process, and it's probably not going to be that. It's going to be up here, or it's going to be a poop test from a microbiome.
Right.
It's going to be one of those two, or a combination of the two, if I had to make a guess. And we might be closer than that than you think,
Well, I mean, if you
which
think
is
if you think about it, you've got dogs that can smell out cancer way before it's even
exactly
detected, right? So, if we
exactly
think, we're the smartest and brightest,
right.
we're usually
No.
not, right? We're missing something.
Yes.
we're missing
Yeah,
something. We have, we've got
what?
all these other things going on from a lab
Yeah,
or
exactly.
a golden retriever that can you know determine
Yes.
if someone has cancer,
Yeah. Yeah.
prior
Exactly.
to even it coming up on the radar.
Yeah. Or diabetic, or you're about to have a seizure. I mean,
Right,
that's
seizure,
the world is
exactly.
riddled with dogs who can sense you're going to have a seizure before you collapse and have a seizure.
Right,
The dog will actually alert the patient so they can sit down, so they, stop driving, park the car, or whatever,
right,
so that just for safety.
yeah.
So we know this exists. The question is, how do we tap into that obviously natural phenomenon? And so I do find it very, very, very fascinating.